What's happening, my friends? Welcome to this episode of Car Seats and Coffee. I have a very special guest, the host of the Parables podcast, Ejay Cruz. Welcome to the show, brother. All right, Ejay, first and foremost, my man, thank you so much for jumping on the show today. You are actually my first guest that currently isn't a dad, but I know you have so much insight and value you're going to add to this, and this is what it's all about, my man. So thank you for being on the show.
Oh man, dude. Hey, I'm truly honored. Man, I feel like that's a lot of pressure right there. but I'm sure I could give a different insight and different approach and a different thinking mentality, in regards to, what your podcast is about. And I know for sure that I could provide a lot of value, man. So again, I thank you so much, and I'm proud of you, what you're doing, man. Obviously, coming from the podcasting world myself. I know how powerful the platform is and what it could do. So again, I commend you.
Absolutely. Thanks, brother. So let's jump into that. Let's let everybody know, let's talk about Ejay. What makes you tick, man? What do you do? What do you love?
Yeah, man. So I'm a registered nurse by background, been doing it for 10 years. I'm currently still a registered nurse manager that oversees 2 hospitals here in Southern California. But as far as to answer your question, what gets me excited, it's really just people. And that probably speaks on behalf of me in my nursing career, meeting so many different people throughout, my profession. At the same time, though, as being a podcaster, I'm just all about people. I love to be surrounded by good energy. I love to network. I love to learn new things about from people. Being a podcast host, and I have guests who come on my podcast, learning from them, kind of their story and everything that's led up to where they are, their wisdom, their mindset. It's just something about engaging with people that really fires me up. In addition to that, I consider myself a serial hobbyist in that I just love to get into different things. It's funny because every time I tell somebody I'm a serial hobbyist, they're like, man, that sounds very fancy. I kind of just made that up too, serial hobbyist. But really when I say that, I just love to get into different things. I think within the past, definitely like 3-4 years, I've started to really tap into getting out of my comfort zone, and I love to try new things because I always know there's always something that unfolds after that, whether that's the other side of fear or there's lessons on the other side, whatever it may be. I love to get into different things, learn different things about myself, and yeah, man, I love to be just around good energy, whether in regards to people, maybe it's a collaboration, business, whatever it may be. If it excites me, I want to be a part of it. And to add on to that, if I know I could contribute to it, then that excites me even more.
Absolutely, man. Yeah, I was just watching something. It's funny you say that today, and it was talking about how it used to be performance. You get into the arena, right? Men would stand in the arena, and that was you were in it, right? And there was this lead up to it, and how many people fear just stepping out, just getting out there and doing it. And it's but that's what life is.
Yeah.
That's the whole thing, right? It's you can either sit back and watch, or you can jump in and be part of it. And those are the people that were living it and doing it. And I love that you're talking about bouncing off, feeding energy, being part of things, just going at it, being that serial, just you never know what the serial hobbyist, what that next thing's going to bring to you, right?
Yeah, I think that's the excitement. See, exactly what you said. You put an emphasis on the excitement about it. I think lots of times when people start going to foreign territory, things like that, they look at the bad stuff. They kind of think oh man, what if this? What if that? Oh, this could happen to me. The fear side of it, these how it could be I guess spontaneous. Me, I kind of look at it more from I guess you could say controlling aspect. It's kind of okay, I don't know what's gonna happen, but the fact that I basically have control because I'm making this decision, I guess you could say, it excites me, And then again, you just kind of don't know the end result or what comes after. It just depends on your approach. Usually for me, I always look at the good things to come out of things, and I think that again that ties into kind of who I am as a person, but also as a nurse too. Because at the end of the day, when I'm a nurse, obviously I'm in an environment of healing, distress, pain, things like that. And so in my career, I've always had to look on the bright side too, to help my patients heal, obviously from my practice, but also from a spiritual sense as well. Right. So again, I just just kind of approaching it in that way. And again, it's always exciting, man, just to learn something new, but also at the same time, you learn something new about yourself.
Absolutely, dude. I mean, that's the whole reason this episode was like kicking off. You and I we actually chatted about podcast stuff before, but man, when, I was throwing around ideas like, well, what if I bring on younger men or men that aren't fathers yet and like get the perspective? And you were like, yeah, absolutely. It's because it's all relevant, right? We all jam, we all feed off each other. And, there's going to be a dad that listens that has a son maybe very similar to you and right now is like, man, I just need to reach out to my son. We're not together right now, living together. He's doing all these things. He's hustling, but I got to just pick up the phone or jump on a plane and go see him or whatever, So I love
Yeah.
that, dude.
And it's I'm glad you bring that up. And I hate to kind of get on the, because we have like such high energy right now, but just the fact that you brought that up, I have to bring this up. As a nurse, and I said this at a speech I just did about 2 weeks ago at a university. As a nurse, I've had people pass on my watch, right? Unfortunately, and sometimes during that watch, I was the last person that my patients saw. Like they had no family, no friends. It was just me, right? And I gotta tell you, 95% of my patients, some of the things that they would tell me, that their last words was always about regret. So, I wish I did this. I wish I did this, EJ. I wish I had pursued my passion. And then to add on to what you said, I wish I had reconciled my relationship with my father. I wish I had a better relationship with my brother, things like that. So it's, like, again, I just have to add that because you brought that up about that relationship. And again, again, you don't know what's good to come out of it. And I like that I liked how you hopped on the topic of that, of bringing that outside perspective, me not being a dad. Because I always tell everybody too, you should always be connecting with so many different people, even if they're not in your industry. Like for me coming from a podcasting, networking, nursing background, hopping onto your podcast, fatherhood, things like that. It's like, what the heck? Why would he bring EJ onto the podcast? Well, I got to tell you, I'm pretty sure we're about to dive into some stuff that could kind of give you some insight from a different perspective. You just don't know. Just because you're in a different field or industry does not mean you could take the same mentality and the principles from that and apply it to what you do.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely, my man. So let's talk about some of like just jumping into it. What influence from like your dad, even just your family in general, it could be your mom, your dad, whatever. Like, what was that influence to help you lead the track that you're on now, and kind of some of those things that they instilled in you to make you want to keep going, or maybe have that serial hobbyist mentality or drive?
Yeah, it's interesting because I look at my dad and my mom like they're like polar opposites. Like, of course, like it's crazy, right? Of course, not to be stereotypical too, but like I have the mom, the loving, empathetic mom who's always there for me, always making sure I'm okay. Just always just nice sweetheart, right? Then I got my dad who he's actually really really tough. He was really really tough and strict, but that was his way of showing love. And of course, like as I matured, I finally started to realize that it's all started to come together, right? But I felt like I always had like two polar sides of that, right?
Right.
And it's just interesting though, as I began to mature, I slowly began to realize like the way they raised me as a child and growing up, and as I matured, like I put it together. I'm like, oh God, I'm so thankful they did that, because now I realize like why who I am. And to give you some examples, like for instance, like I don't have a story where, I don't know, like I was homeless, or I struggled deeply where I couldn't get food, or I was into drugs or anything like that. What I will tell you is my parents, they came from a third world country and they established themselves here in America, and they basically gave me everything that they always told me they never had back home in the Philippines where they're from, right? So what they always instilled me, even though I guess you could say I was spoiled and I had it better than other people, the fact is they still instilled in me that you still need to work hard for everything you go after. And that is like, to me, that like, it's funny, it all came together one point in my life where I was like, it clicked. I'm like, dang, now I know why they were so hard on me, like all the time. Like, even though like I had it all together, they still would, instill me like, you got to work hard if you want this, that. So it's just, just two two completely opposite parenting styles, I guess you could say, but it
Sure.
was all out of love, for sure. No question, out of love.
Dude, and that's the thing, man. I'm so glad you brought this up because anymore it seems like good storytelling, right? We fall into the trap like, oh, there's got to be something dramatic that happened in my life, or no one's gonna listen to me, right?
Yeah.
If I wasn't on the streets and I didn't do this or that, like you say, get into drugs or whatever, like why is someone gonna listen to me? And it's like because there's still that energy behind what you're doing and what you're saying,
Yeah.
right? And in your core, it's like, yeah, I might not have gone through that, but we all went through what we went through. And my path is also like, I'm going to get and share a message out there with people, just my truth, right? It's like what your truth is, what my truth is, very different, but not having to go through that, like you said, that struggle, like necessary in the sense, like it's okay to also have parents that were there and supported you and loved you. Like that's not a bad thing, right? In society, it's like we almost want those other stories now to be able to be like, well, my dad wasn't never here for me. That's why I started the podcast. And it's like, well, it's not necessarily the truth. But with that said, I'm going to be a very different dad than like my dad was, right?
Yeah, yeah, and you know what? It's interesting you bring that up because I think a lot of people what they tend to do is they tend to fall victim into like comparing their stories. Like,
Mm,
right? Yeah, I just admitted like I wasn't homeless. I didn't struggle to eat, but I had different struggles, and
yeah,
because it's my own story and my own upbringing and my own unique journey, like to a sense, I almost feel like it was just as hard. Like, you know what I mean? Like it's hard to maybe get somebody to understand that, but I still had my own struggles, even though it's different from someone else who may have had it worse. You know what I mean? So I think a lot of people fall victim to that. Like they think like, oh, especially when someone's kind of like crying like about it, like, hey, like you had it way better than me, like, you know what I mean? Like I'm gonna give you an example. Like you used to have friends all the time, like, oh, you got it good, like your parents have more money, they support you, blah blah blah. But at the end of the day, it's like, okay, well, my parents didn't force me to go and get my nursing degree. I showed up every day. You know what I mean? I studied my ass off while you were probably partying and passing out. Like, you know what I mean? Just things like that. So it's kind of like you can't compare
yeah,
uh, two different people in general, but also because of their journeys. The journeys are two complete separate things, right? So yeah.
absolutely, man. Um, let's talk about a little bit like so so growing up with like your dad, so you said that your parents like polar opposite. Maybe your dad was more of the like this is how it is, more strict, kind of like you were saying, not in the sense of like and I don't know, I'd love to get a little more of like what you mean by that. Was he more just like emotionally just wouldn't tolerate as much as your mom just more had that like caring, loving nurture, and he was like, no, EJ, you got to get at it, my man.
Yeah, no, they would just bump heads all the time. Again, my mom would be always the supporting one. Anything I needed, like if there was something in regards to, I don't know, anything I needed for school or anytime I was getting, I gotta admit, like that's your hobby started at a young age, man. Like, you know what I mean? Mom would just be like, okay, like, she would just be the loving mom she is. And my dad, on the other hand, they would butt heads because he would have problems with that. Why this? Why that? Why are you giving him so much? I think maybe there was a tug of war between like you're giving him too much, where he needs to, maybe work hard at it, things like that.
Sure.
And to give you a prime example, and I've said this in a previous podcast, but it to me, like when I finally clicked one day where I realized like, wow, like this is why I'm the way I am, and I'm so glad my dad did this. Again, he's showing love in a very different way. But for instance, like growing up when I used to play basketball, I remember driving back home after I think it was like a loss, right? And my dad would really like get at me and be like, EJ, why aren't you like your teammate who's scoring all the points, who's doing all the work? He would basically compare me and put me down as if like, why aren't you like that guy? And obviously being a young kid at that age, it would tear my heart. It's like, dude, what the heck? Like, I'm not, like, I'm sorry I'm not like that kid. I'm sorry I'm not that talented. And then we just went through a loss. And what I finally realized is like, it's not like he was trying to put me down, like, hey, like, you suck, you're right? It was more like, hey, if you work hard, you could be just like that kid, your teammate, if not better. You know what I mean? And I know he probably didn't, he didn't say those exact words, but I knew he meant it in that sense. You know what I mean? So again, it's just like they would always butt heads. Mom, like here, like being the loving one. My dad's always been the strict one. I gotta add, he worked night shift full time, so I think like the lack of sleep, he was a little more grumpy than most dads, I guess you could say. But
Sure.
again, like after I found success, again, there was a period of my time where I was just screwing around, right? I was waiting to get into nursing school. I think I waited like almost 2 years because it's very competitive, especially at a junior college, because it's a lot cheaper, right?
Sure.
There was a period where I was just screwing around, like drinking, going out, partying, fixing up cars. And even like, I'll give you another example of my dad. He would go around and start telling people, oh, EJ's not doing shit with his life right now. He's just screwing up, screwing around, right? And that would hurt me because I'm like, dude, how can you say that about me when I'm technically just waiting? But again, when it clicked,
Yeah.
finally I was like, no, you know what my dad's trying to tell me is like, hey, you need to stop screwing around. Just because you're waiting to get into your nursing program, you should be aiming for other things too, maybe a backup plan. You know what I mean? So it's just things like that. Like, and it's hard, right? Like some people may not understand that or maybe get that with their parents. For me, like I just knew it. It's just like, man, he's been telling me to progress, but just like he just wouldn't say it. He would just show it in a different way. You know what I mean? I think that's kind of what's made me who I am today, and like my mentality, always just working hard, always trying to progress, always move forward, always look towards growth.
Hmm. No, I really love that, man. Makes me think about like, when you first like move out and you're on your own, right? And you're like, man, my dad used to get at my ass for like not shutting the lights off or closing the door or closing the car door too much. And now it's like, oh, I get it, right? It's like you said, it's like, ah, okay. Like I
Yeah.
have to pay the electric bills. I have to do all these things, so it's really good to like we believe our parents are getting at us and being hard, but then there are some like lessons when we can step out of that equation, no longer be like the child, but like view it as just another man or adult, right? In that
Yeah.
situation.
It's
Um,
it's it's interesting because it's always like, yeah, you don't. There's what's that saying, right? Like you don't know until you have your own kids, right?
mm,
And my mom said that you said to me, like, you just don't know. When you have kids, you'll understand. And it's
right.
to me, like, man, I don't even have kids, but like I get it. Like, you know what I mean? Like get it. And like I don't know if that just comes from maturing at a young age because I became a healthcare professional when I was 23. Maybe just viewing from relatives, or maybe just seeing my patients and the family dynamics in that sense. Because there was, oh my God, there were so many different family dynamics that I had to witness and experience with my patients, right? But
Yeah,
like I said, it's just interesting. Like I feel blessed to know and kind of get it, even though like I said, I don't have kids. You know what I mean? But just to know and to understand that about my parents, because I know there's that disconnect with other people who don't understand why their parents were the way they are. You know what I mean? But I'm confident there's a reason why. Like I'm pretty certain like there's a reason why.
absolutely, man. And I know you shared earlier, you shared that story about like people when it's coming to the end of their life, right? And the regret that they have, and a lot of that being, man, I just should have made amends with my family, right? Because that's regret. Phew. Dude, that's something I would never want to take to the end, like because it's true, and that's real regret. Is there any other things that like you just witness seeing like those kind of relationships, maybe like families and their kids in the hospital, like any stories that stand out that you're like, oh man, like that's the kind of parent I want to be, and this is why I want to be that kind of a parent.
Yeah, I think though. I think just from that career, man. Again, you just see so much. You see so much. I almost want. I don't know why this word just pops in my head, but I just want to say crisis. I don't know why, because you just see so much disconnect in family, right? And then also you saw like the really strong family too.
Mm,
But I would say I saw more of the disconnect because you got to think about it. When somebody is hurting or they're about to pass or things like that, again, there's a lot of tension, there's a lot of stress, there's a lot of choices to be made, right? And that doesn't sit well for people, especially those families who are not ready to accept what's happening to their family member, right? But what I will say is some of the things that just jumped to me is every time I would experience or witness like, again, that crisis, or there's that family tension, or just that indecisiveness, or fighting, arguments, whatever it may be, it just reminded me like, hey, like family is really important, and I want to be prepared when that time comes, because that time does eventually come. You never know. We're never ready, I guess you could say, right? And just to know that I want to be there for my parent. Like, for instance, like if it were my parents that were sitting in the hospital bed, I want to be there for them. Like, and I've witnessed even too, not to talk down on my profession or give away my credibility as in the profession, but I've seen times where I feel like, man, like it's good families there, because then there could be like a consensus of decisions where things would have panned out better. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So to me, it's just kind of like, having that family like bond and like that relationship. Because again, going back to regret, man, and I spoke like I said, I spoke this on in a speech I just did recently. Like when we talk about regret, we're talking about long like emotions. We're talking about shame, being shameful, and obviously emotions can be temporary. But dude, once you die, man, that thing's permanent. You can't change. You can't change those emotions no more. You know what I mean?
That's
So
it.
yeah.
So let's start at like the relationship you had, obviously, when you were kids, very different now with your parents. That you're a man, you're established, you're doing your thing. How's your relationship with your dad now, being in your current state, versus, like I said, being a kid before? We kind of hit that, but like, is your relationship better now? Do you feel like more friends now, or what's that about?
Yeah, what's crazy is like as kids, we would obviously, because of all that, we would butt heads a lot. I mean, there was times, like, just to add on to it, where we would get in physical altercations, like, you know what I mean? Like, and there would be times where like almost ran away type of thing. But man, dude, no, like it's just crazy now because we have the most amazing relationship. You know what I mean? Like we're
Yeah.
just like so close. I think it's kind of weird, and I almost felt like once I became a professional and like I guess proved that I wasn't a screw up or messing around, it kind of like eased off. Both parents, right? But I
Sure.
mean, like, not even just that, but me and my dad are like really close. We always joke around. Like it's such a good relationship for sure. And he's retired. He goes back and forth from the Philippines and stays with me. But we have an amazing relationship overall. I mean, we have no problems. I don't I'm not afraid to say anything to him because I think we've built that, you know what I mean, from the experiences that like we have no filter when it comes to saying stuff to each other. So it's like if there's anything I do need to say, whether it's like in a strict sense or assertive sense or like in a funny sense or humor sense, like I'm not afraid to say anything to that man. You know what I mean? So
Yeah. And isn't that fun, dude? Because I'm totally at that stage. I'm like, look, I don't have to hide anything or be anybody to your dad. This is just who I am. You know who I am, and that's a fun dynamic, dude. And I know that we can't do that with like our kids when they're little, because it is about like trying to grow. Like someone said the other day, try to raise adults. Like you think all the time like you're raising your kids, but no, I'm trying to raise like adults,
yeah,
right? Because like there's a certain point they're gonna leave. If I've done my job well, they're going to leave this house and hopefully go out there and do what they're doing, and be the best versions of themselves. Um, you know, in your stage and all the things, I know you're like crazy busy and stuff, but what are your thoughts on like family life? Have you thought like, wow, what kind of a dad do I think I would be? And like, what are some of the things that I would want to do as a dad or any of that?
oh yeah, to give you some insight, me and my wife been trying for a year. Like I'm not trying to stop it. Like when it happens, I feel like I'm ready. It's funny. I can't believe I'm gonna say it's live, but I actually have a very, very needy Siberian Husky I call him my son, and I would never compare an actual child to a dog. But I feel like if there was a time to compare a dog to a child, I would feel like my Husky would prepare me the best. You know what I mean? But what I will say is, I'm looking forward to fatherhood. I mean, I'm just so busy right now. Like it's one of those things where like I'm just when it happens, it happens. Like I can't speed it up. I'm already trying, So
Yeah.
when it happens, it happens. I think, of course, society's pressuring me and my wife because we're at that age. We're kind of next in line in our family. But dude, I'm totally excited, and it's funny that you asked that because I'm like a fly on the wall. I've always been a student of life and a student of just like learning, like from people, from society. And I always ask myself, like, I wonder how I would be as a father, or what I would teach them. Like, what would I teach them now than compared to what I thought I would teach them last year? You know what I mean?
Mhm.
And it's just one of those things like where I feel like I'm prepared, but then at the same time, like I won't know till it comes, right? So uh, it's exciting for sure. Again, I'm the youngest from my family, so of course everyone's waiting for me. And it's interesting too because right now I feel like with kids I'm just kind of like, oh, like stay away from me type of thing. But of course, like I know when the kid comes, that's totally gonna change. You know what I mean? It's not like I tell my nieces and nephews like get away from me, but it's just kind of like I think I'm just so busy and focused on my life and focused on my wife and us
Mhm.
that obviously I don't see that side yet, but then we're working towards it too. So it's just like one of those things waiting to happen, I guess.
Yeah, and that's a really interesting time too, brother. I mean, it seems like forever ago. It's only like because my oldest son's 5, my other one's 3, gonna turn 4. Yeah, we had them like back to back, dude. My wife's like, yo, when we start, we're having 2 kids and they're coming. Like, we got at it, and I'm like in the thick of it. But it seems like that same thing, like had so many things, just came out of grad school, did a MBA, like was like on the career path, like moving up the corporate ladder, like excited about all that, dude. Kids came, it was like, woof, just like flipped me, like 100% changed everything. And now it's fun because I'm like, what kind of a man do I want these boys to witness, right? Because we think it's the stuff coming out of our mouths. No, dude, they just are watching like 24/7. They're watching,
Oh, I
and it's
bet.
like they start doing stuff and it's like, oh, oh shit, they learned that from me, like, you know what I mean? So it's like you didn't even think they were watching you do something. It's like, okay, like that makes sense now,
Uh-huh. But that's
so I,
funny you bring that up because last night I was just watching a rerun of the third movie of Meet the Fockers, whatever
okay.
that I yeah, it's just like funny like you said, like yeah, they listen to everything. Like they're like an owl, right?
Oh
But
man.
you know what, I want to go back to something, and I hope this brings value to fathers out there and maybe up and coming fathers or people who are looking to be fathers is the fact that, and I'm going to be very vulnerable. I've never said this like to anybody, is that the pressures of society. Like I just really was vulnerable and admitted like right now I'm just kind of like with kids. I'm just kind of like oh stay. I don't gravitate towards it. I guess you could say, but it's not like I hate it. It's not like you know I go away. But I say that because like there's times with society and pressure and I won't say who they are, but obviously they're close to me, and they would kind of ask me or like say like, why aren't you like good with kids, or why don't you spend time more with your nieces and nephews, or you know things like that. And it's almost like putting a burden on me, and to me that's like kind of unfair. I'm in a different place in my life, and when I have my own child, I know that's going to change. You know what I mean? So I think like I guess what I'm trying to say, I think like sometimes society pressures us, whether you are a father now or whether you're trying to be a father, of how to, I don't know, fit that role, I guess you could say. And I think sometimes it's not fair. You know what I mean? And again, it's just, it all comes down to our journeys. Like I'm not there yet in my life because I'm still here trying to make it happen. You know
Mhm.
what I mean?
Absolutely.
I'm sure things will change right away once my wife says, EJ, honey, I'm pregnant. I guarantee things are going to change, but right now I'm not in that place. So sometimes I feel like, again, society pressures us in these different ways. And sometimes you just got to stick to your guns and like know what you want in your life. When you're ready, you're ready. Like, you know what I mean? When you're ready to evolve into that mindset, then you will evolve. But when people are trying to pressure you into that, it's kind of like, whoa, hold on. This is my life over here. Relax a little bit. So
Absolutely, dude. 100% with you, brother. Like, believe that in all things, right?
Yeah.
Like, yo, I'll do what I'm gonna do when I'm gonna do it. Same thing. Like back to that story, your dad, like you're like, yo, EJ, you messing around. Like my son's like messing around, not taking things serious. It's like that's the perception that you see. But believe me, when I'm ready, I'm gonna get at it, right? And it's
Yeah.
that same thing with fatherhood, dude. What I would love to know, man, because I this just intrigues me because I'm trying to build a community of dads, right?
Yeah.
That takes what society says and like proves it almost wrong.
Mhm.
Because like, I want to know what your perception of like fathers are and stuff. But from a dad standpoint, it's like the media and all the shows, like we're just the dumb guys that maybe work, pay the bills, we're never involved, we don't really care, we don't plan and all this. And I'm like, man, it maybe that's what it was, but I feel like it's different now. But what are your thoughts on that? Like, what do you see like dads being now? And kind of like, that perception also with yourself, like what you want to be or you think you're going to be kind of like.
No, dude, I love the question. I've been surrounded by a lot of good dads, I will say, being that, from my brother-in-laws to friends. It's crazy because this year, I swear, like all my friends are becoming dads. Like again, I'm the last one, right? So, um, but you know what? No, I think that's completely ridiculous. I know a lot of fantastic fathers. I know some fathers that are doing it like almost into a sense on their own,
Mhm.
where they don't have a support system. What I will say, and it's funny, man. This is talk about timing, right? I just had this discussion with my wife, and I was telling her how I feel like not even just dads, but parents in particular, it's almost like they're in competition with other families to show, like, hey, this is what I'm doing with my kid, or hey, this is what they're accomplishing right now, or hey, take a look at my Facebook pictures because I just threw the sickest party. And like it's almost like they're just trying to show off.
Mm.
And like I only bring this up because you asked what my viewpoint is I know for sure I don't want to be like that. You know what I mean? I don't want to like I'm not trying to compete with nobody. At the end of the day, I'm always trying to compete with myself and being the best version of me. And I know when I become a dad, definitely gonna be that, trying to be the best dad possible. And not to impress someone else, not to impress people on Facebook, is to just be a good dad and be, impress if anyone to impress my child. You know what I mean? That's kind of what I see out there. Overall, though, I know a lot of good dads, man, and I don't know where that's coming from as far as like, there's these beat up dads or dads don't do anything. I think that's complete. But am I allowed to cuss on this thing?
Absolutely, man. Absolutely.
I think that's complete horseshit, man. You know how it is. I mean, obviously there's some stereotypes and things asked of men to be a man, I guess you could say. But at the end of the day, like I think there's that DNA in all of us and all of us men that we know no matter what, we got to take care of business. You know what I mean? And it's not in the sense of pride or the spirit. It's more of like, no, like we are natural human survivors. We are naturally evolving, adapting creatures, man. And that revolves around fatherhood, I'm sure.
Absolutely, dude. Absolutely. Listen, man, I'm not going to ask you, like, obviously, what advice do you have for other dads out there, but what advice do you have for other men in your situation that are just grinding it out, that are just driving, they're just going at it, that feel that pressure also? Like, what would you want to say to them?
Oh, dude, I love this. I love these questions, man. I love this podcast, bro. There are different podcasts I've ever done, man. But you know what? This is like I said, dude. I think, man, just shut off all the noise. I'm so sick and tired of like again the pressures of society, the expectations that someone has of a specific like population or maybe like gender, like men. You know what I mean? In general, I'm just so sick of tired of it. I'm just kind of like why are people out there trying to give me advice when they don't have to deal with the consequences? You know what I mean? And I take it to anybody listening to this who's again not a father yet. For me personally, again, I'm getting that pressure a lot, and I've been dealing with it fine. I mean, I'm sick of it, but I deal with it fine because I'm grinding, right? what I'm doing now is because it could happen anytime now, right? Where my wife will walk in and be like, hey, I have a kid. Like, if anything for me is I just know I'm grinding it out right now. I'm following my passion, keep working hard, plan for the future. Like for instance, for myself, when I have that conversation with my wife, when she tells me that, we're going to have one, I know I'll be ready, like financially wise, you know what I mean? Mentality wise, to always, well, of course, I'll never be ready to be a father, but at least always grow your mind, right? Make it strong, emotional resilience, build that thick skin, all that good stuff, right? In preparation for being a father. I think it's always about growing. I preach this all the time, man. When you're stagnant, when you are stationary, when you're not doing nothing with yourself to grow, you're putting yourself in a very, very dangerous spot. And to give you an example with my nursing career, because as you know, Thomas, I'm trying to go into full-time entrepreneurship. In my career, I got very, very comfortable being in a stable career, right? Always going to be in high demand. I'm hired at one of the highest paying hospitals. So there was a time where I really, really got comfortable, and because of that, I felt like I went a few steps back, and now I'm just slowly starting to get myself back up on my feet. You know what I mean? I'm starting, and it's just, I think that works in every aspect of life, is to always keep growing, whether that's professionally, as a husband, as a citizen, as a business owner, whatever it may be. Just continue to always be a student of the game meaning life. And yeah, man, just shut off the noise. People, I mean, it's your life. Why let other people try to dictate, the choices, what's going on with your life. So,
dude, EJ, you're crushing it, bro. Like this is it. This is exactly why I love just these formats, not even just podcasts, but to your point, you had said this to me. You said, dude, I challenge you. I'm going to put you on the spot here because you were like, I challenge you just to do 2 episodes a month, dude. I've been going a little crazier now, and I bought a bunch of equipment because of you too, dude, which I'm not, but it was like meeting people like yourself, dude. You just get it. You understand. It's not just a father thing. It's not just a man thing. It's just in general, dude. It's all about growing, changing, evolving, being the best version of yourself, shutting out the noise, because there's a ton out there. And honestly, at the end of the day, those people aren't walking in your shoes and living your life. So you got to do you. You got to do the best you can. And that translates so much, though, to fatherhood. It's ridiculous. And I try to say that all the time. Like, you stop growing, back to the point where I said they're watching.
Yeah.
Like, and what example are you going to be at the end of the day, dude? Like, it's the same thing as being a husband or a partner, wife, whatever. It's like that person, they're watching, man. So it's like, do the best you can so that at the end of the day, you can pull up that chair next to you and invite those people in and be like, I'm making it so that we all are better, right? I'm doing this, I'm growing, I'm being, so that I can sit back one day. Because the thing that always gets me in my mind, man, so I'm like, especially with Thanksgiving rolling around here, is it's like, I can't wait to sit back one day and see my boys and their families or whoever they're with, or even if it's just them, whatever, and sit back and be like, man, look at what you've been through. Look at all this that we've done, and just like that, to me, just it fires me, dude. It gets me going every day just to be the best version of myself so I can be the best version for the other people that need me. So I love your advice, dude. I love what you bring. And I appreciate the fact you were willing to jump on, not knowing where the heck this was going to go or how it was going to be. You're out there, brother. You get it. And again, like I said, I appreciate you, man. I'm glad to have met you and just be jumping on doing this. So
I want to add something. One of my colleagues, I was on his podcast not too long ago. His name is Tony Watley. Shout out to him. But he said he put out something on social media that really, really hit me. And again, I'm not even a father, right? So just imagine it hit me, and I'm not even a father. But he said something along the lines of this. He basically said, how can you tell your kids to pursue their dreams and passions when you gave up on yours? You know what I mean? How powerful is that? And again, you just said, right, that your kids always watch and listen. So to me, that hit me very hard because obviously, when you are doing something out of the norm, you're pursuing a passion of yours, and you don't know if you could turn into a career. There's always that question and doubt. Um, that's something very deep I think about, right? I mean, even if it's not panning out right now, just to know that I am setting an example for my future child.
Mm.
Seeing that quote really hit me, man. And I think, like you said, whether, again, I'm in a different stage of my life, even though my kid's not here yet, but just knowing how I operate, both as a person, as a citizen, as a professional, as a husband, that, again, like you just said too, it's going to translate, and it's going to just become this whole thing. And that's why I take, like, the way I am now so serious. Like, man, dude, I'm trying to do all this crazy stuff. As you know, I'm trying to put myself out there. I'm trying to grow this, grow that. I'm trying to become the best version of me, because at the end of the day, it's going to translate to my kids, even if they're not here physically right now. I know it will. I know it will.
100%, brother. Like I said, dude, thank you so much jumping on, sharing your advice. I appreciate you, dude.
Hey,
100%.
thank you, man. Thanks for having me. If anyone wants to reach out and dude has any questions, you can reach out to me. My social media at it's Ejay Cruz, and we got to chat with you guys. Thomas, man, keep doing your thing with the podcast, brother. I'm proud of you. Like I said, I challenged you, and I'm glad you're actually taking it a step more. And man, good job, good for you, man.
Right on, brother.